Yes, yes, so I can take care of the rest.
And we're on the just waiting for these guys.
I saw them.
She said it didn't value her house. That's the son of both parties.
And then we're on the welcome to the policy council study session of April 12, 2016. Please join me for the pledge of allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, all council members are present. Meeting agenda approval, is there any changes to tonight's meeting agenda?
Seeing none, we'll move into study session, the first study session item, which is 16-062, study session regarding confirmation of the 2016 ballot measures, streets, sidewalks, and fire department. And with us, we have two presenters. One is Aaron Leonhardt, Public Works Director, and Fire Chief Bob Van Horn.
All right, good evening, Council. The Chief and I are here to follow up on your February 27th Council retreat where we talked about potential ballot measures for November. There was some different conversation during the retreat, so we wanted to come back and just confirm the direction and make sure that the ballot in November is what you are anticipating. So just a brief run through again of the funding needs. I'll be speaking on obviously on the street and sidewalk measures, and then the chief will speak about the fire measures. So I want to talk about street operations, pavement preservation, sidewalk and crosswalk construction, and then fire operations and fire station upgrades.
Mic closer to you.
Yes. All right, is that better? Better? So the revised funding strategy is what's on the screen right now. Since your council packet was published, we were able to get the median assessed valuation for homes in Snohomish and King County. So these numbers for the estimated annual impact are updated from the $350,000 that was in your packet to a $376,000 home, which is, according to both assessors' offices, that's the median number. So this comes to a total estimated impact of little over $255 a year. The property tax aspect of it would be about 35 cents per thousand for a household. So if somebody took their assessed valuation and extrapolated from there, they would have what a true estimate for their home would be. The 125 for sales and use tax is an estimate that primarily assumes that our sales and use tax come from residents. So it doesn't really account for folks who come from other cities and purchase things within the city of Bothell. So the funding strategy, as I've changed it for street operations and for sidewalks and pavement from what you saw at the retreat. The retreat conversation assumed some license fees that council wasn't that interested in pursuing at this time. So we have, the new proposal proposes just street operations as a as a property tax measure, and it would be 25 cents per thousand of assessed valuation, and that would bring in about $2 million a year. And so that would be for street operations, our existing operations to replace lost revenues. It would also be to reinstate some programs, asphalt patching, sidewalk repair and replacement. The sales tax measure has morphed from a sidewalk construction measure to a pavement preservation, sidewalks and crosswalks construction. And at the retreat, we talked about a 0.1% sales and use tax. This increases it to a 0.2% sales and use tax. One of the reasons to move this was without the license fees, the property tax for pavement preservation and street operations was going to be fairly high. And this also brings revenues in from other folks who use the roads and sidewalks, in addition to just the residents that property tax would impact. And then for fire maintenance and operations, it's about what, a 0.073 per 1,000 AV, and I believe this is consistent with the retreat. And then the fire facility improvements, this is for the updates to stations, and it's the equivalent of a $2.5 million 20-year bond. So just to walk through in a little more detail the funding needs for those following along at home primarily. For street operations, we have lost revenues over the past 15, 16 years in the street fund. So $1.4 million of the ask for street operations would be due to lost revenues, as well as just the increasing costs over time. The council did in 2012 increase the business license fee, the equivalent of about $500,000 a year for street operations. So some of those lost revenues have been made up with that additional business license fee. The street operations would also reinstate programs for asphalt patching, as well as sidewalk repair and replacement, and it would also increase our pavement markings, and also provide maintenance and operations of the new infrastructure that the city has been constructing. Absent new revenues for street operations, there will be reductions in levels of service, including reductions in staff. And part of this pie chart shows part of the reason for that. So our existing business license fee and fuel tax revenues equate to about $1.4 million a year. When you look on this pie chart, what we've titled uncontrollable costs, so signal, streetlights, surface water fees, insurance, those come to about $1.1 million a year. So that would leave us $300,000 a year for all of our other street operations needs. Payment preservation, the proposal for the sales tax increase would increase the payment preservation program from the current level of $950,000 a year to a level of $3 million a year. The majority of the effort would be focused on arterials. However, it would add $330,000 per year to focus on local seals. So the primary goal here is to keep our arterial pavement condition index at an 80, which is the level we're almost at right now. Sidewalk and crosswalk construction. During the retreat, the initial proposal was purely for sidewalk construction, and council had a conversation about wanting to specifically create a fund for crosswalk construction. So this proposal has $150,000 a year for crosswalk construction. The focal point for sidewalks and crosswalks will be safe school walk routes. So those will be the priorities for both of those programs. Crosswalks, we have not created our prioritization program as yet. However, we have created a prioritization for sidewalk segments, for missing sidewalk segments. And in addition to prioritizing schools, we will also have a mechanism to prioritize the most frequently requested sidewalk segments as well. They will be assigned a point value. So this program proposes to increase the city expenditures on sidewalks and crosswalks from $450,000 a year to $1.3 million a year. And with the goal of constructing about over 3.5 miles of sidewalks in 10 years.
Public Works Director, can I ask a quick question
You certainly
on
may.
that slide? So
Please.
are we talking about the street operations property tax, or is that the sales tax, or a combination
This is
of
the
two?
sales tax.
Okay.
So the pavement preservation and the sidewalk and crosswalk construction are sales tax. Yeah, just right now, only street operations is the only property tax measure now by itself.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry about that. All right, Chief.
Well, good evening. I've got 4 slides for you tonight, and then there will be a final slide, and then we'll entertain your questions. So you've heard the fire funding needs right after, about this time last year, after I presented the cost of what the Regional Fire Authority would be. And then you heard it again at the last retreat, and then, so this is the third touch. So some of this is going to be familiar to you. You've heard me say before that fire is balanced on a 3-legged stool, our ability to provide service. And the first leg of that is personnel. You have to have personnel. The second is training. And then the third leg of the stool incorporates facilities, equipment, and apparatus. If any of those legs become out of balance, it really affects the level of service that we provide. So I find that an easy way to communicate why we have to address not only the personnel issues, but the training and equipment, facilities, and apparatus. Fire M&O's budget has averaged about 9.66% of the total budget over the last 6 bienniums. And I've got a handout. I tried to put this on a slide, but it got really muddy. So I'm going to give this to you, and you can see how the relationship between M&O and the annual budget has maintained throughout the 6 bienniums. But if you look at the bottom of this, I've provided where it says supplies, services, and contracts. Thank you. The big issue is this chart doesn't tell the whole story. The whole story is that our contracts, which are the bottom line, are going up, and as I've said, our M&O has remained stable. So the amount of money that we have to spend on the department is actually going down over the last 6 bienniums. So if you look at the total on the very bottom there, contracts have gone up 48%. And if you combine the supplies and services, they have gone down 45.3% over the 6 bienniums. When we talk about contracts, I'm specifically talking about dispatch. NORCOM is our dispatch center that we use. The paramedic contract that allows us to have paramedics respond into Snohomish County portion of the city. We send our apparatus to the city of Redmond for mechanic, the heavy-duty apparatus like the aid cars, the fire engines, the ladder truck. We send it to Redmond for service. And then we have part of a hazmat consortium because we don't want to take the whole expense of providing a hazmat team just with the city. So we have a consortium with numerous North End departments to provide these services, and there's a cost to that. And then the East Metro Training Group, we joined, with your permission, in 2015 and 16. So there's an added cost to that. So I just wanted to give you an idea of why we are addressing the $600,000 in M&O. And to me, it's a telling picture. So some of the knowledge and skills are also going to depart with our retirees. We presently have 24 firefighters, 25 if you include me, eligible to retire in the next 4 years. And that's about 41% of our workforce. And with retirees comes a decrease of knowledge, knowledge, skills, and abilities, if we cannot get the people out to train. And as you've heard me say, I've provided numerous types of training that we need to be involved in to maintain and improve these skills. So types of the things that we have in this $600,000 ask are funding to support staffing. Every year, probably for the last 2 bienniums, we have gone over in our overtime budget, and the city has graciously allowed us to continue staffing without cutting back. As opposed to a lot of the departments in the city, fire cannot have a leadership team meeting without providing overtime. We have to call people in because of the nature of shift work. And so we have not had leadership team meetings for a while until this year, and I just felt it was so critical we had to bring some leadership team meetings back in. But the $600,000 is part of that ask. Or the leadership team meetings is part of that. Did I hit the wrong one here, Aaron? There we go. Professional development, classes, conferences, and seminars, I've already addressed to that. We are maintaining our critical certifications like our EMT certifications, but we are not growing and expanding beyond what is absolutely necessary. When we do send firefighters to training, if they're off duty, sometimes there's an overtime requirement. If there's on duty, they need to be replaced so that they can leave, and our level of service is not compromised when they attend training and they're on the clock as an operational firefighter. We lack bench stock, so if we have a piece of equipment that is damaged on our mainline rigs, we have to take it off the reserve apparatus. And some of our reserve apparatus don't have a complete inventory of equipment. So if we had a disaster and we had to put our reserve apparatus into service, they wouldn't have a full complement of equipment. It provides and maintains certification. It prepares staff in the community for disasters. And then it monitors health, prevents injuries, and maintains and improves health and fitness. And then there's also a certain amount of funds in there that will cover unknown expenses. When we talk about the facility improvements, I thought it was important to show that the downtown fire station was built in 1980, and it had an addition in 1995, and that's where the firefighters' living quarters are now, on the east side of the building. So at the oldest part of that building is 36 years old. Canyon Park Fire Station was built in 1985, so it's 31 years old. So the downtown fire station staffs 8 people. We have 2 paramedics from Shoreline that also reside at that fire station. And there's 3 people at the Canyon Park Fire Station, and they live there 24 hours a day. I think it's important, well, 36 years, 31 years, that's not that old. But when you talk about being in operation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week around the clock, the wear on the fire stations are 2 to 3 times more than what you would expect out of a regular city facility, with the exception of police. So the examples of needs within the fire facility improvements are, if you haven't heard, we're having some real communication issues. We've gotten some of the some of the telephones from the Dawson Building in City Hall, and that new technology in the phones it can't be run in the wires that are in the existing walls. So we've been talking with IS, and IS is going to go ahead and start the project of replacing the wires in the walls. But should the citizens approve this $2.5 million capital facility bond measure, some of that money that we use to replace the wires in the walls now to improve our communication is going to come out of that $2.5 million. We have some plumbing issues. Firefighters say that they currently aren't sure where the toilet's going to flush, and if it does flush, will it overflow? And so we have some plumbing issues in our stations. There needs to be upgrades to the kitchen, bathrooms, flooring, general station conditions. Station 45, the one at Canyon Park, doesn't have a building sprinkler system, and the downtown fire station does. So as the fire chief, I think it's important that we put a sprinkler system in our station at Canyon Park. We need to seal or replace the asphalt. Heavy apparatus are hard on asphalt, and so it wears over time. The west end of the downtown fire station has single pane windows. It's not energy efficient. In fact, some people have to wear sweaters and other people are too hot. So we need to work on the HVAC system also. We need to improve the security so that the community room can be used at the downtown fire station after hours. Currently, unless a staff member is there, we really can't allow somebody to come in because they have access to the full station. There's no way to lock them out of the rest of the station. And then you've heard me say that we need to remove the exercise equipment from the apparatus bay, and there's some advantages to that. It provides a better atmosphere for exercising, and I'm not talking about aesthetic atmosphere, I'm talking about air quality, because right now they're in the same area that the apparatus pull in and out of, and there can be some diesel emissions within that area. It would allow for one more fire apparatus to be parked indoors, and we all know that when you park a vehicle outside, it tends to deteriorate faster than being indoors, and we do have some reserve apparatus that are parked outdoors. And then it will also create more space for 4th of July pancake breakfast. We can't remove the exercise equipment when we have the pancake breakfast, and so we're limited, and you know how popular the breakfast is. So there's some advantages for this.
So process from here, the public engagement process continues. We are working closely with communications officer and the executive office, as well as our departments, to engage the public, including a public meeting that we have scheduled for Monday. We will bring resolutions to council by July at the latest for your consideration to actually put these measures on the ballot. The resolutions are due to King and Snohomish County elections by August 2nd. For the street operations, there are some additional elements that we'll need to discuss with council throughout the fall primarily. One will be stormwater rate impacts. The stormwater rate is a significant charge on the street operations right now. If there are any changes to that, that could adversely impact it, but we are also looking at an option to not charge the street operations for surface water fees. So that's something that council will be considering later this year. We will have multiple budget versions for street operations for your budget consideration, since the ballot measure won't go until November and the budget is due to you in October. You will see what the reduced level of service budget looks like, as well as what the successful ballot measure budget looks like. And then, as council requested, we could come back and discuss a $20 license fee with the council in December, once we know the outcome of the election. So that is all for our presentation, and we're open for questions, comments, and direction.
Okay, who'd like to go first? All right. Nobody? No questions? Councilmember Sandberg, thank you. Yep.
So thank you both for your presentations. I think the challenge that we have as policymakers and the people who are ultimately voting to put these measures before the public is convincing them of the need. And I think that I can start with fire. I think that at least for the capital request, that's the $2.5 million over 20 years. I think that's a really compelling request, because you can just see in the state of our fire facilities what kind of need there is there. I think that's a very compelling request. One of the things that we had talked about at the retreat was the possibility of a fire impact fee. And I think when voters recognize that, you know, we're being asked to pay and new development is being asked to pay, that provides more of a compelling reason to vote in favor of these types of requests. So are we going to make any progress on setting a fire impact fee before these measures go to the ballot?
Yes, I communicated to the city manager today. It's my fault that this hasn't come before you sooner. I didn't understand council's urgency with this, and so I didn't make it a priority. So I apologize for that. So to answer your question is yes, I'm meeting with John Keats, the Parks Director, this week to understand what his timeline was, how he went through the process, because I've never been through this process before. And I will bring before either a written document I'll send to the city manager explaining what the process will be to move forward with a fire impact fee.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then, so the operations part is, I wouldn't say necessarily a harder sell, but when I look at it and what people have mentioned is, and I guess I'm asking how would you respond to that? And I know you've already responded to that with all of the training and supplies and equipment that the fire department has gone without. But I think the natural inclination is to say, if we've been getting this great service for this long on a certain budget, why the additional $600,000 a year? And I know that you've talked to us about that, but I think we need to sell that to the community.
Yeah.
Because when I think of that $600,000, and maybe this is incorrect, and I look at your graph, I can see that the overall total budget, this is a biennial budget, so roughly, so if the biennial budget is 21 million per biennium, then that's roughly 10.5 million per year. But then the maintenance and operation is roughly $1 million a year, is that correct? If it's 2 million in the biennium? So we're going from and is it correct to think that we're going from a maintenance and operation budget of $1 million per year to $1.6 million? Is that the correct way to think about it? Or have I got something wrong?
Wouldn't it be 1.3?
No, because I think what the ballot measure adds is $600,000 per year.
Yeah. I think that if you look at 2015 and 2016, you're right, it's around $11 million a year. You had sent out a question, and the 2016 adjusted budget for fire is approximately $10,688,341. So out of that, for the biennium, we have about $1 million a year in maintenance and operations. But again, a large percentage of that, or a significant percentage of that, is to provide for our contracts. So it doesn't provide for training. It doesn't provide for equipment. It doesn't provide for people to come in and replace firefighters to maintain our level of service when they go off and train, because we can't say we can only train on these days. When the days become open and we send people out, sometimes people will be working and we have to replace them on shift to maintain our level of service. So we've even got in here to prevent future back injuries. Again, our workforce is getting older. I said that 24 people are within retirement age between 2017 and 2020. And there is a higher possibility of injury as you get older. So I've put in there for the 2 city aid cars, self-loading stretchers that the paramedics use. Our community is getting bigger in size, and it's getting harder and harder on the firefighters. So, and remember, when I talked to you about this time last year about the fire's needs, I said it's going to cost you more for an RFA, but it's going to cost you more to retain your fire department and have a well-funded fire department. So there's a lot in this $600,000 ask, and it was originally higher than that, but working with finance, we were able to reduce it, and I believe it's a responsible number.
So when we're talking about an increase of $600,000 per year, we really should be thinking about it in terms of a 600,000 increase on a $10.6 million budget, not just parsing out the maintenance and operation budget, because this 600,000,
Right.
like you said, is going to provide for personnel costs to reduce overtime and to provide staffing coverage when people are going to be training. So it's not realistic to think, oh, this is 600,000 on $1 million operation budget. It's a 600,000 increase on an overall $10.6 million budget. And I see you got your brow furrowed, so.
You were saying that a portion of the 600,000 is going to personnel costs?
That's what I understand from the
Yes.
list, yeah.
Is it broken out?
It would be overtime. There's a part of overtime is in M&O, not in the personnel costs side of the equation.
What percentage?
So are we talking about, we're not talking about increasing our FTE
No.
necessarily. It's talking about covering overtime costs, which is actually in the maintenance and operating budget.
Yes.
So then maybe it is correct to think about a $600,000 increase on a current $1 million per year.
Yeah, if you look at 15-16, if we say it's $10 million and that there's, under the maintenance and operation, it's $2 million for the biennium, then it'd be $1.6 million for each year.
I'm just trying to bring up things that people are going to clue in on. And if they're going to see, oh, that's a 50% increase in an operating budget, then we, again, like I said, we need to be making that case as to why we think that's necessary. And then on the very bottom here, this is the expenditures, supplies, services, and contracts. These are the expenditures in your budget. So over the course of 3 biennium, what the fire department has spent in supplies has gone down 14%. What they've spent on services has gone down 31%, but what we've had to pay out in contracts to our various groups has gone up 48%. Is that what you're?
That's correct.
What you're communicating
That's
here?
correct.
Okay. Let's see here. Well, that's the questions I have on fire. Did we want to have more organic discussion on fire? Do you want me to go through the questions on what I have on street ops and the sidewalk?
I just do both.
Okay. So just so I'm clear.
Do you have
Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely.
So I'll just do my fire now. I like keeping on the track that you were doing. I think this chart is problematic to our goals, because I'm looking at just 10 years ago, for the maintenance operation at 1.1, we're at $2 million now. That's 67% increase over a 10-year period. And when people call the forgotten decade, where the last 10 years, people's property value is net neutral, their incomes, most of them are net neutral, to see a 67% increase in maintenance operations is pretty phenomenal as in regards to, wow. The total personnel costs are up by 60%. So we, as a city of Bothell, I see that we've taken very good care of our firefighters. 60% increase overall with personnel costs, pretty considerably well supported, in my opinion. What I think this ballot's going different direction than I would hope is I think our facility, specifically a new fire station, maybe a south fire station, would be more where our focus should be, rather than what I'm seeing is a 60 to 67% increase in maintenance and operations and personnel costs. But if you can maybe help me through that, because I think this is going to be extremely problematic to see something pass where, if you look at our budgets for the last 10 years, they've increased by 60%. Can you help me through that as somebody who's voted 100% with fire, besides the RFA?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I can help you with that. Again, when we're talking about the maintenance and operation, we're spending a lot of our maintenance operation for the contracts, and the contracts are necessary. But these are things that we don't have any control over. And so even though it's gone up, it hasn't gone up to help purchase equipment and supplies and training and things like that. So that's the best way I can answer that.
Do you have a monetary value to the 40%, 48% increase in contracts? Are we talking that's $1 million of the $21 million, or is it $10 million? I mean, I kind of need to get a,
48. That would be, so in 2011 and 12, our increase was, it was $185,000. And it was a Redmond Mechanics contract, Snowcom Fire Marshal Services, and those are just some of the justifications of the needs. I don't have all the details.
so our contracts from 2011 to 2016 have gone up 48%, and that is equivalent to $185 increase?
I'd have to do the math.
Okay.
You know.
I think that would be
I'm
a,
just not prepared right now to answer that question.
okay, helpful number for me to know. So,
So you would like to see the dollar figures for the
yeah, the
percentages?
dollar figure, because statistics in regards to percentages on certain line items that are unseen, you know, you go from $1 to $2, that's a 100%
Sure.
increase.
Sure.
So if we're talking it's $185,000 out of a $21 million contract, that's not really, don't want to minimize it, but it's not that big of a deal. We should be able to find ways to cover that. If it's $5 million of a $21 million budget, that's a whole different circumstance. And I'm back to this huge percentage increase for fire of 60% over 10 years. I think we've been definitely showing as a city that we support our fire department. I think there are very much inadequate treatment in regards to facilities that we need to address. And I don't know that this current levy that's moving forward is doing that.
And was the percentage you stated, was that on personnel costs, or was that total budget?
Personnel costs 60%, maintenance operations 67%.
Yeah. And the personnel costs are contract-driven, so whatever the contract says, we really have no control over that aspect of it, other than good bargaining.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Collective bargaining certainly has been interesting. I'm trying to be very careful in my statements, because I 100% support fire. Yet I know that many of my friends and many of us sitting in this room have not seen a 67% increase in our pay in 10 years.
Okay.
Raise your hand if you have. That's the extent of my questions in regards to fire. Thank you, Councilmember Sandberg, for yielding the floor.
Did we want to stay on fire for a little bit? I mean, we're kind of on the. Yeah, okay, well then.
Do I need that?
I got it. Okay, let's stay on fire. I think it's a start. And I think it's just a start. A few years ago, the fire department wanted to leave us. Why did they want to leave us? Probably because they weren't being treated fairly in their eyes. Equipment. Backup rigs don't have all the equipment. You need to grab a backup rig, you need to grab a backup rig. It should have all the equipment you need on it. Training. It's essential in the fire service. It's essential. You know, it's like bullets in a gun range to a police officer. It's what saves lives. Tesla just had $1 billion in advance revenue brought in on a car that's going to be made next year. It's a hybrid. It's a great car. Bothell Fire hasn't had a hybrid class in the last 6 years. My guess the technology has changed a little bit. And yet it's probably one of the most dangerous vehicles they have out on the road that they have to deal with. But because of budget restraints, they haven't been able to have a class. That's sad in my eyes. I mean, that's just flat out sad. I mean, we got guys going back to wildland fires. They need training in that. We just lost 3 firefighters last year in those fires. I mean, and the only way you get better is through 1, experience, and 2, training. And the chief just said they got 24 people that are going to get ready to leave. There's a lot of experience going there. They're the ones that are going to be able to read the smoke, read the fire, know how to attack it, know what kind of structure it is, know the building construction, know what kind of hazmat stuff they got inside that structure. They know all that stuff, the old guys do. And yet we're going to be losing them. The facilities are shambles compared to the other facilities in the RFA. That was proven to us in the RFA paperwork that came out on that. Can't use the phones, can't flush the toilets. The beds, we have a co-ed fire department, if I'm not mistaken, and yet in a lot of our stations, they don't have single bedrooms. Boy, it seems to me that we probably need those, don't we? Just to keep up with the times. The other thing the RFA brought out, which was fairly interesting to me, is that Woodinville Fire and Shoreline Fire are about the same size, right, Chief?
Shoreline's a little bit larger.
Or no, Woodinville and Bothell, excuse me.
Woodinville and Bothell are about the same size.
And yet we have twice the amount of alarms that they do. We have the most alarms that we can't send that initial rig to because it's already out on a call. Now, we're not even addressing personnel issues here, are we? But that seems to be an issue that we have, that we're not even looking at. Supplies, we need to have updated supplies. I think part of the reason that the supply budget's the way it is that we couldn't afford to buy some of the equipment that we needed to buy. That's probably one of the issues. I think the South End Station's a grand idea, but I think we need to do more research on the South End Station. I think we need to do more research and take a look at where we're going to be in the next 10 to 15 years and take population projections and look at where we need to build fire stations. If we're going to do it, let's do it smart. Let's do it for the citizens. I mean, what is our main goal here? We're council members. Our main goal is public safety, isn't it? Isn't that our primary responsibility to the citizens here? Costs on equipment. I remember when you can buy a fire engine for $350,000, $250,000. Now it's $750,000 to $1 million. Truck's about $1.5 million. Cost of the equipment's gone up exponentially. Yeah, granted, so have personnel costs. Well, some of those, if you got 24 that are going to be leaving, I guess personnel costs are going to be going down a little bit. But with that, hundreds of years of experience. I think I've had my time.
All right, thank you. Personally, I don't think the $600,000 a year, I think it's just a stopgap. I do. Chief, OT expenses, can you share with us what our OT expenses have been last few years?
We've been in the $400,000 to $500,000 range. Part of that, though, has been reimbursed through the wildland deployments,
Right.
about $100,000 of that. Our budget's been somewhere around the $275,000 range for overtime.
And what percentage would be overtime to cover for either to send somebody to training or to backfill for somebody to go to training?
Right now, that's not happening unless it is absolutely mandatory training, such as...
We're not even funding our staff, or overtime staffing fully, but we're over budget on our overtime staffing.
The vast majority of it is being used to maintain our 12 people on duty every day of the year.
Okay, so and maybe city manager can help you out with this one also. So in the time period of your graph, what percentage has the city grown, of city growth has there versus fire department growth? In other words, how many citizens have we brought into and geographically increased our size? And has the fire department growth kept up with that percentage-wise?
The chief did share this graph with me before we provided tonight, so I don't have that data, but I can give you some anecdotal data. When I started here, we were probably, with the King County annexation, about 6,000, so we probably have grown another 4,000. So maybe 10,000 population we've grown in the last 10 years.
So would you say that's 25%?
Well, we're
30%?
43,000, 44,000 population.
Okay, and percentage-wise, how much has the fire department grown?
So King County annexation did not impact the fire department as much as the police department. So you can't take that full annexation value.
Right, you just have the population, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that population would count.
Yeah, I can tell you a number is that when I've looked at budget numbers over the last 10 years, these are, I don't have the spreadsheet with me, but I looked at the fire department's bottom line number, both personnel and everything rolled up into the O&M. It's close to probably 49% over that 10-year period. Versus police, it's probably, 43%. And it's a little bit higher than the overall general city. So it's kept in line in terms of, in some cases, it's actually been provided more funding, both total personnel and total O&M than all the departments rolled up. And if you just compare it to public safety, it's a little bit more, pretty close to what police have received over that same time period.
And I understand that, but that's kind of comparing apples and oranges. Nothing against any of the other departments, but if somebody calls in sick, generally that seat sits empty. You can't do that with the fire department. So you have to put a backside in every seat. But
No, I'm talking about total budget, not personnel. Just
yeah,
total.
well, no, I'm talking personnel because our city's growing, our call volume's going up, but we're probably running with the same number of FTEs that we were 10, 15 years ago.
We did get 2 additional firefighters. We got an increase in administrative staff with the South End annexation. Those have been but what we haven't got is we haven't added additional on-duty personnel. We've beefed up our support system that supports the firefighters who go out and serve the community. So when we added 2 people, we brought 2 people offline to provide services to the firefighters so they could better have the equipment, the training to
So the
serve
boots on the
community.
ground to go out and serve all of us in our time of need, we've reduced the FTEs out there, and yet the city's grown 25%.
I may have misspoke. We've had 12 people online. When I came here in 2009, we have 12 people online tonight as we sit here. So we haven't increased, we haven't decreased. What we've increased is the support staff on days to provide additional people. So we use 2 firefighters to do that.
Okay.
And your training division has added a couple people too. They've added another battalion chief.
Yeah, we added 1 to training, we added 1 to support services.
And
Yeah.
and also there was a administrative person added to track training.
That was
Yeah.
as part of the annexation though, right?
Yes. It wasn't? Well, the two firefighters we received in the annexation.
Right, but the admin person was.
Yeah.
that.
Okay. So we got increased because of annexation, not because of this one annexation, not because of the overall increase in population here in the city.
We have increased firefighters over that 10-year period, not resulting with any annexation. We've increased firefighters.
But we've also had retirements.
We're talking about FTE numbers.
Okay.
Firefighters, we specifically have increased firefighters to what we've had previously. Again, over a 10-year period, we've increased.
Okay. And so on your graph here, Chief, that you handed out to us, services have gone down 31.3%, essentially a third. Who's providing those services now?
Well, these services are communication, professional services that, such as host testing. We don't have a professional host testing company coming anymore to certify our hose. We do that. We've taken on that responsibility again. Outside training, instructors, we don't do that anymore. It includes cell phone, pagers, radios, out-of-town travel for classes. Again, we spend about $35,000 a year for water. And that's
So
just a
we don't
requirement.
we don't use pagers? They just carry their portable?
We do have some pagers, but a lot of the firefighters have added that app on their own phone to get notification of calls too. Training conferences, registrations, we've cut way back on. Membership dues, we're very selective of what we become members of. So those are the services.
Okay, landscape services, has that been cut?
Parks Department still mows our lawn
Okay.
and provides periodic ground services. I believe our firefighters are still mowing the Canyon Park Fire Station lawn. That's an agreement we made with Public Works when, if we could get a lawnmower, we'd take care of the lawn. We're doing our best to be good partners with the city too.
Okay. A comment was made about a south station, and I'm not saying we don't need a south station. You could probably make an argument, and there has been an argument made in the past to have a south station, but the stations that we have are in bad shape, and we got to take care of those, and we got to take care of them now. I tell you that if it was our home, we'd take care of it. We'd figure out a way. If you were living there, you'd figure out a way to take care of it. Wages, I know being in this profession, when the economy's good, all my buddies are making all kinds of money, hand over fist over me, and they go, why are you doing this? And so, yeah, I would say that others make more than I do over this period of time. Then, so you know, I don't have a problem with the wages. And Councilmember Agnew, I got to agree with everything that he said. This is our primary function as an elected official at every level, local, county, state, is public safety. In the state, you know, the hens are coming to roost with state patrol and the things that they're having to do there. It's the easiest place to cut funding for some reason. It's the easiest place to cut funding, and everything else is sexier than public safety. Parks, roads, I mean, it just seems like everything is sexier than public safety, but these are the guys that are there every day, holidays, birthdays, anniversaries. Yeah, well, guys and gals, I use the term, but these people are there every day, and it's all for us. And we need to provide the things so that they can do their job for us better. And that's the station, and that's training, and upkeep of the stations, and training, and the equipment, and the backup equipment. You know, it's got to be there. It's got to be there for it. They're gonna figure out a way to do the job, and they shouldn't have to figure out a way to do it. The resources should be there so that they can do it. They're going to go out and serve us, and if it's a bicycle and a couple of buckets of water to go put out a fire, they'll bicycle to get there, and buckets of water to put water on the fire. They'll do what it takes, but it shouldn't have to come down to that. And again, I think $600,000 a year, that's just a stopgap measure. Healthcare costs go up, the cost of rigs go up. 1.35 million, I think it was in Bellevue for each for 3 ladder trucks. 800,000 for engines. Requirements that are put on by the fire department, NFPA, LNI, OSHA, it just drives costs up. And so, like I say, 600,000 is a stopgap. I'm done. I've rambled and got my point across, I think.
Thank you. Most of the questions I had have already been answered through the process, but I wanted to follow up and maybe ask a couple additional questions. One would be on the overall budget. How does our overall budget, without and with this increase, compare to other municipalities, other fire departments? The actual budget numbers for the size of communities?
That's a hard question to answer. I will say that as the fire chief of Woodinville Fire and Rescue, their budget for the same size department was increased, but they also had to provide their own HR services, IS services, and these are things that you don't see in the fire and EMS budget with a city. So again, it may be comparing apples, but they're dramatically different apples. And so I really, I can't say how we are. If we did it budget amount per firefighter, budget amount per station, budget amount per call, I have not done the homework to see how we compare. What this budget does is it compares against our need. And so that's why I presented what I have. So.
Okay. And then appears that we're going to have, is it 2 ballot measures that we're going to have? One that's going to be for approximately 0.73 per thousand, and then 0.23 per thousand?
That's correct, because the fire facilities budget measure requires a 60% approval, and it has to meet the 40% of the previous general election.
So those are actually 2 different measures. So one could pass, one could fail.
They could. The 600,000 is a simple majority, where the other one has to meet the 60% approval rating and 40% of the previous general election. So people could not turn out and it could fail because you don't achieve the 40% or may not meet the 60% approval rating on the facilities ballot measure.
I would say that's likely, though, that we'll probably achieve the 40% given the November election, so it's more
Yes.
likely to prevail or fail based on the supermajority of 60%.
Okay. And the contracts themselves, I think your bullet point down here about the contracts, do you see the contracts that we're signing now through negotiations, is that correct? Or is it labor through negotiations only?
It's labor through negotiations. For the paramedic contract, they basically, I think it's been going up about 6% each year. Norcom, there was a smoothing portion that was giving us a break as Norcom was, that's the dispatch center, as it was getting underway. Some of the smaller departments were getting a little bit of a break. Now the smoothing's gone away, and so the departments are paying their true cost. They've removed the smoothing. About 2 bienniums ago, the Redmond mechanic contract went from an hourly shop rate of around $60 an hour to over $90 an hour. And so that was a huge hit that we took. We have, again, we're part of the East Side Hazmat Consortium. I can't speak right now as to what the increase has been with that. And again, in 2015-16, one of the reasons that we have the increase we do is because council approved the department to join the East Metro Training Group that helps us better prepare our firefighters to work with each other both locally and regionally. So.
Okay. And then Councilmember Sandberg spoke a little bit earlier about the possible impact fees.
Yes.
If we were to have an impact fee, would that help reduce what we're going to the community for?
It could only be on the facility side, as I would understand it. I don't think we can use an impact fee for M&O. And so it could be a reduction. I'm not convinced that with the $2.5 million we've asked for is going to meet all our facility needs. So once the community says, and I provided you examples of what this money could be used for. So if and when the community says, yes, we support this ballot measure for $2.5 million, then we're going to get architects involved, and we'll be doing some internal work to determine what are we going to get the biggest bang for this $2.5 million. And that has to be spread out over the Canyon Park Station and the downtown fire station, because both of them have needs. So.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. I feel like I just entered the emergency room and there are patients bleeding everywhere. I would never deny that I see a need in the fire department. I do see that need. I'm disappointed we haven't moved forward in looking at the fire impact fee, because I feel like it's a mistake to go out for a ballot measure when we don't really know what we're asking for. And if we want a south station, I feel like it's premature, I guess. I'd like to find a way to fund the $600,000 in our budget without going for a ballot measure. I haven't been here the last 10 years voting for budgets where the fire department wasn't funded. So I don't know what to say about that when I continually hear that we haven't funded the fire department, because I wasn't here. I would like a better picture of what our budget is. There's been a lot of development. I don't know what those numbers look like, and if that additional money is something we can use to fund the fire department. But I'd like to know some of that before we make these decisions. I've heard there's an advisory group for these ballot measures, and I've heard different things from people who've been invited to be on the advisory group. I've heard it's not really advisory. It's, oh, thanks for coming, you're now our pro-statement group. I'd like to know what they think and what they would support. Not invite them to just join in, but actually to give us their thoughts. And this isn't directed at you, Chief, but you're right there, and Aaron's hiding behind there. Yay! So yeah, I feel like it's hard for me to make decisions or say what I think, because I don't really know the budgeting process. I don't know what those numbers are and if there's wiggle room. I do want to fund the fire department, there's no doubt, but I don't think there's any way on earth that we're going to get 4 to pass. And when I look at triage, I look at the roads, when I've been told that if we don't fix them, then we can pay double. And those firemen have to ride on those roads too. And that's a public safety issue. And sidewalks is a public issue too, a public safety issue, because we've got children walking to school without sidewalks. And so I guess in my mind, if you want to know what I think, I guess I'd prefer to go for the streets and sidewalks and find a way to fund the fire department that includes fire impact fees, and knowing really what the goal is long term. If we're going for a south station, then that needs to be in the fire impact fee study. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at.
So I have some of the same concerns as the deputy mayor about all 4 ballot measures at the same time, but we'll stick with the fire piece first. Looking at those two, $190,877 a year, it just doesn't seem like that would be that hard to find in our budget. So I guess my first question is, do we have a revenue forecast, or when do we expect a revenue forecast to work with our budget?
No way.
I would say generally in the last 10 years, we struggle every biennium just to keep up with the expenses. Our revenues don't grow as quickly as our expenses do, and so we're constantly trying to rebalance, reduce expenses so that we can just match up with the expense request. I mean, expenses by and large are coming in at probably between 5 and 6%. Our revenue is coming in anywhere from 2 to 3% on average, and so we're constantly rebalancing our revenues against our expenses. And so now to add on another $600,000 of new stuff just compounds that, our inability to kind of keep up and align revenues with expenses. So that's been kind of the history. That's been the history of cities, quite frankly. In Bothel's case over the last 10 years, and I think for any cities in the same situation.
It's probably more like 16, it's the IMIN initiatives.
Yeah.
Basically, the voters have said, come to us and tell us what you need, and we'll decide what we want to fund. And that's where we're at. We've Band-Aided, we've went through budgets, we've determined any type of excess there was and put it towards increases in firefighter pay, increases in police pay. I mean, 85% of our budget has to do with paying people to provide services. So even though we talk about the M&O, that's not the big part of our budget. It's just one that keeps getting reduced because we need more people. But there comes a point where you go too far. You don't have the actual Band-Aids for the people who are providing services to you. So M&O is a very small percentage of our budget overall. It has more to do with staffing that we can't keep up with.
And just a reminder for the mics, if your voice projects well, the room should be able to hear you fine. The mic's not for the DCTV, it's just for those people in the audience that may not be able to hear you if you have a low voice.
Okay.
So if they're able to project out, they should be able to hear you just fine.
So what is the schedule for the community group that was put together to look at to give us, I don't know what we've coined the group, but there's people that are going to get together and talk about these different ballot measures. What is their schedule for giving us feedback, I guess? Is that what we're working on?
We weren't necessarily a group that would be assembled to provide you feedback on what should be on the ballot, because council's already having that discussion. You're already, at least if you confirm this evening, determine what should be on the ballot. This was, and I want to draw a distinction between what this group will be versus what the city's outreach effort will be. Like we have done in past ballot measures, which haven't been very often, that the city has gone out and asked citizens to support additional taxation, whether it be services or capital improvements. But we're limited for the most part to holding a meeting with the community to let them know that these are the ballot measures, these are the reasons why we believe ballot measures are important. But then our plan was, to the extent that there are interested parties within those people that attend that meeting that want to serve on either an advocacy group going forward or even a group that wants to oppose the initiative, those are within the realm of those individuals to decide. The city is, again, distinguishing in terms of its efforts, outreach efforts, is one of information. We can provide factual information. We can't tell people that they should vote for A, B, and C because of X, Y, and Z. We simply provide them with the facts. This is what the ballot measures will do. This is what the consequences will be if they're not funded. But that's the limitation of our outreach. Different from an advocacy group, or a group that might oppose initiatives who will actively then champion the efforts, will try to persuade, influence voters to vote one way or the other. But our outreach efforts will be, as we've communicated to council, we've invited citizens to attend a meeting on the 18th who would be interested in any of these 4 measures. People we believe would be interested in those 4 measures. People who we know are supportive of sidewalks, who are supportive of fire, or just interested in those topics. And so that'll be on April 18th. What the group does after that will largely be left up to that group. But our outreach will include, we'll be doing various presentations around the community, whatever you decide to do here this evening between May and October. We'll visit the chambers, we'll visit the Rotary clubs. Any group that's interested in this topic, we'll make presentations to. We'll develop fact sheets of social media that we'll place on the website between May and June. We have a Bothell Bridge article that'll come out in June. Presumably the council would approve the ballot measure language in June or July as indicated on the schedule. We'll finalize we're also limited to one print sort of flyer that would describe the ballot measures, much like the flyers you get during any election. And so our plan is to distribute one of those about the same time that the mail-in ballots are distributed in both counties. So that'll be occurring in mid-October. And that will be mailed out to all the residents. And then we have another Bothell Bridge article due in September. Around September, we'll prepare another one. And then finally, sometime during July, we are anticipating that we'd ask council, and council would want to endorse all 4 of these measures, where you as a public body can endorse all of the measures, and you can tell residents or tell people who are interested that you endorse them and you hope that they would vote for those measures. And so we would ask you to do that, or anticipate doing that. You need to hold a public hearing to allow people to speak in favor, speak against that kind of action. But that's the extent of the city's outreach. Now, we'd also hope that there'd be this advocacy group or other group that would carry these things forward and have a community conversation, if you will, with everyone who's interested, who's going to be voting on these measures in November. And that has its own meeting schedule and its own funding separate from the city.
So, thank you. That was helpful. So, the thing about the whole impact fee, is it far-fetched to think that the impact fee could generate $191,000 a year?
From impact fees that I've seen implemented, and I came from a city who had an impact fee ordinance with similar type of development during that time frame, I think that's a very aggressive amount to anticipate that you're going to be able to support that level of fee generation. But again, the fire chief hasn't done, or we haven't done any sort of analysis, but I've never seen that sort of amount generated.
I think we budget $40,000 for the parks. They've been doing better with all these large developments, but that's not going to be ongoing forever.
Okay. And then just to the list of needs, I mean, the couple of council members have said that it's really just a Band-Aid. You fix the toilet, I mean, stuff like that. It just seems impressive that we just don't have the money to deal with it now, but I understand after hearing the discussion why these needs are outstanding. So, but like I said, I look at these 4 and thinking about the ballot and whether or not people would support all 4 of these, and I'm pretty sure they wouldn't. And so I don't know what really to do about that.
Well, the only options you're having, obviously you can put a strategy together that would ask voters for what you believe to be the first set of ballot measures that you want them to consider, and then you can come back at a subsequent election. Remember, you're just not limited to November elections, you're limited to special elections as well as the November and the primary too. So you have August, you have November, and then you have several elections during February and March and April. No, March, okay.
April, yeah.
It's April.
And do we know what else is going to be asked of our for property tax in the November election?
We're checking on all the known property tax right now. We've heard from King County that they don't have anything planned, recognize that they have until August to place something on the ballot. Nothing from King County government. I'm not sure if we've heard from King County Health Department yet, but we'll check on that. We're still waiting to hear from Snohomish County. The one known property tax that we know will be on the ballot will be ST3. And they have a property tax component, which I believe is 25.25% for every 1,000 or $25 for every $100,000 of assessed valuation. They also have a sales tax component and I believe a utility tax component too for Sound Transfer Free. But right now, those are the only known property tax that would affect Bothell taxpayers, in addition to whatever we would promote and ask citizens to support.
Okay. So I don't feel like, do you feel like you've gotten enough direction from council about the fire, now that we're an hour and 15 minutes into this 30-minute topic? Do you feel like you have direction from the council about at least the fire ones? We haven't talked about the road ones yet, really.
I would say that No, I mean, if you want changes, I haven't heard of any changes that you'd want to make to either the dollar value. So absent any of that, I mean, the impression I would take that is that council would still want to have the ballot measures. The question might be that you revisit, do you still want to have all 4 of them during the November election, and is the amount appropriate? So maybe when you finish the other 2 ballot measures, you could have that discussion, because that was staff's interest, is to learn the way we have framed these 4 measures are the appropriate. Do the amounts support the need? And do you want them on the November ballot so that we can proceed with our messaging, our newsletters, our fact sheets, and start preparing all the information that needs to occur before we place those on the ballot in August?
Okay.
July in this case, since you'll likely take a break in August again.
So we're going to do one more round and talk about roads, but it'd be good to try to get those questions answered in your testimony, or not testimony, when it's your turn with the microphone. Are you okay to go first again? Brave soul. Roads.
Okay. And I'm not going to talk much about roads because we've kind of gotten late on this topic. And from what I'm hearing people say, it seems like we need to get together and talk about this again. And certainly in the context of our overall budget, because what I heard from what the deputy mayor was asking, and then what the finance director was saying is, there is a perception in the community that our revenues are growing over time, and why can't we use those revenues to address these concerns? And the general response is because our expenditures are increasing over time. And what I heard was that we have staffing that we can't keep up with, which is not a statement that I want to make and accept as a policymaker. So I feel like we need to be having that conversation rolled in with this conversation. We need to have a good understanding of what our revenues and expenditures are so that we can explain to the public, and this is why we're asking for this much more money. I mean, so that's sort of my general thing, my general impression, that I feel like we need to come back and touch this again. And we have time. We have time before July.
You do have time before July in terms of when you place them on the ballot, but I would say you're already fighting the clock in terms of trying to engage public, trying not just with our information, but with any group that would be supportive of this and how they have a conversation with the community. I think it'll take all of the next 6-7 months just to educate the community, and the more time that you spend trying to determine what goes on the ballot, it'll just subtract from that. So, which is why I think we presented this during the retreat, so that council could arrive at a decision and then ultimately come back and we start that process.
So I have some specific questions that I think aren't useful for the time here, but there was a policy question in our packet, which was, I think there was an option to pursue the the sidewalk crosswalk bond as a limited time frame. Is that the one that we could do as a limited time frame of 5 to 7 years?
We could do either of them as a limited time frame. So but the sales tax measure has a maximum amount of time of 10 years. So that pavement preservation and sidewalk construction would run out if we didn't go back to the voters within 10 years.
And I spoke about this at the retreat as well. I prefer a limited time frame as opposed to something that is permanent, because then we are demonstrating to the voters the next time we go and ask, this is what we did with the money we asked last time, and this is why we need to ask for it again. We did this many miles or this many feet, and prove to them the worth of their increasing property taxes to provide for this. So I'm, from a policy perspective, that's what I'm interested in, is the term limited, some kind of sunset that we have to go back and ask again.
For both, for the operations as well?
Probably not for the street operations, but so what we talk about in the street operations is that we've lost all of these sources of revenue over time that has amounted to about $1.4 million per year. But again, we've had other revenues increase over time. And so we just need to to be really clear about, you know, when we see these increases in revenue, why we can't use those increases in revenue for these items. Why do we have to ask for more? And I think that's a conversation that we need to have as a part of our budgeting process this year. And so that's why I've asked, I would love for finance or individual departments to come and talk to council and just, you know, explain this, because, I mean,
We can explain all that from our past 10 years, and we can show you how revenues have matched against expenses, what we've had to do to sort of realign those. What we can't tell you with any degree of certainty at the moment is what likely our revenues are going to be for the next biennium, but they're not going to be substantially different than what they are right now. We're just now seeing the emergence of our downtown, which hasn't fully been, you know, providing revenues as of yet, and it probably won't be in this biennium, and probably be subsequent bienniums that you'll see most of the sales tax generated that'll start to support and fill in some of the gaps that we have. So we can certainly have a discussion at any time with what has occurred in the past, and which I think is a pretty good predictor of what's going to happen in the future too.
right.
I can also show you 10 years of sales tax, can you hear me?
No.
Sales tax numbers, and basically show you 1%. The city did not take the 1% of property tax for 7 years straight, so that compounding effect was lost. The other item was sales tax. I can show you over time in Bothell and Snow County and King County what you can expect for sales tax over, you know, I can show you the last 25 years. And basically, no matter how you put them together, the only thing that has held us in place is sales tax, construction sales tax from what's been going on down here, and the fact that we had a really strong fund balance before the recession hit. So there is just a structural problem within municipal budgets. It's not just us. We've done better than most by far. But the bottom line is nobody around here is bringing in more sales tax or higher increases in sales tax than we are, other than Seattle. And we still can't keep up with the cost of providing services. We've lost multiple major revenue streams. These revenues that you're looking at up here, the first two that have to do with pavement, those have to do with the street fund. That has nothing to do with the general fund. So that is, the general fund is actually has been subsidizing the street fund over years because of the loss of revenue from 16 years ago when people stopped paying tab fees. We have mandated, we have pushed off, and now it's coming back to haunt us because the reality is it costs more to improve them now than if we would have maintained them at the time. And so this is the same conversation that every other municipality in this state is having, seriously. We have to do exactly what the voters asked us to do, and that is, if we need something, we're at the point now where we have to go out and ask, and they vote and decide what they want to see done. And so anyway, that's pretty much where we're at as far as these specific revenues. We can have another meeting and get into the specific revenues, sales tax, property tax, utility taxes, but the bottom line is they're not increasing at the same level as expenditures are. And they haven't for many years.
And I would just say, in final, then pass the mic, is that when we have a conversation about our revenues, we also have to have a conversation about our expenses. And we have made choices recently that have bent the curve up on expenses, and we need to be addressing that, because that is a source of the budget constraints that we're under. So.
Councilmember Freed, do you want to go next? That was the order we did before.
If somebody wants to go before me, that's fine.
You're looking at me to go? Okay.
I don't know. Go ahead. Anybody.
I actually had a question. Transportation impact fees.
Yes,
How does that affect that $94?
it does not at all.
So that you've taken that into consideration?
Our transportation impact fees fund specific projects that are in our transportation impact fee program, and it's all about capacity. So none of our street operations actually increase our capacity. And pavement preservation is a maintenance program, a maintenance capital program that just maintains our existing pavement, so also again, does not improve our capacity. So none of these expenditures are eligible for traffic impact fees. There is the potential, and we'll be prepared when we come back to you to talk about sidewalks, and if we can add an increment to our impact fees for sidewalks, but if we do, it will be very small compared to the money.
Okay. You mentioned we haven't collected a 1% increase.
We didn't
For-
for approximately 7 years. About the time of the recession hit, and council chose not to take the 1%. And that has a compounding impact over time. So I believe it was 7 years, 6 or 7 years that we didn't take the 1%. But even at that, the 1% during that period amounted to between $75,000 and $90,000 a year. So that's what our 1% is.
This last biennium does include the 1%.
Okay. And then the pavement, sidewalks, crosswalks, that is a sales tax increase. And that sales tax increase, where will that put us in ranking with other municipalities?
Don't have that answer for you, but I can get that for you, unless you know.
Snow County just increased 0.3%. We would be, sorry.
Yeah, you can.
We'd be in the approximate range of everybody else with that, but Snow County would be a little higher because they just increased 0.3%. So on the Snow County side, that would be a little higher.
All the questions I have.
So you guys need to give council or staff direction about all 4 ballot measures and whether or not we want to move forward with all of them. We don't need to decide they need to go all out at the same time, but we need to tell them what we want to do. So far, we've had 2 people go and not say what they want to do, so.
Would you care to say what you'd like to do?
Well, I would actually like to put them all forward, but I would like to go through the advisory first to find out what the community wants. I want to hear from the community what they're willing, what their appetite is for them. I could sit up here and make a decision, yeah, I want to put all 4 forward, and none of them pass. Or we can make a decision to listen to the community and see what their appetite is, and then that'll give us a better chance of success. And they may even help us prioritize which should be at the top of the list and what should be at the bottom. So, I mean, I really think we need to engage with the community on this one. That's my personal belief, is we need to listen to the community first and kind of get their appetite for what they want us to do. Is that good enough? Okay.
Well, again, we were holding one meeting with the community with the anticipation that you were going to go forward with ballot measures simply of introducing the topic. We would still do that regardless of what you do. That's scheduled for next week. I think we have something like 28 people that have RSVP to attend. That's 28 people out of 43,000. And so we can certainly encourage them to provide input to the council, but at some point in time, council's going to need to make a decision about what goes on the ballot and then when they go on the ballot. Because coming up, remember with our street fund at least, there are some pretty drastic and draconian measures that'll have to be taken if we don't have funding for streets going forward. Some substantial service level reductions and some substantial staff reductions because we don't have the revenue stream to support streets in the next biennium.
Well, I think that's an important message to get out to the community.
It's an important message, and it is, and it's something we've talked about here for a while. I mean, the only way that we're able to put a Band-Aid on it was annexation of revenue with King County. Because we recognized for years that streets were continuing to take a decline, not only in our ability to maintain them, but just the revenue sources that we had available to us. And so we're at the point now that if we don't have funding sources going forward, again, we're going to have to make some pretty serious and impactful reductions in our street department.
And that means staff?
That means staff, because, again, you've looked at the fire department. The other departments are very similar. 75–80% of the costs are contained within personnel, and you can't make that kind of a dent in terms of reduction without getting into the personnel. And personnel, of course, means service levels. It means for the streets, more potholes, more weeds, more maintenance that doesn't get taken care of on our streets and our sidewalks. But that means staff, that's correct. And our street department today is composed of how many personnel? 8 FTEs? And I'm not going to tell you how many are going to be, will have to be looked at as reductions, but it'll be a substantial number.
Good?
Thank you.
All right. So in order for me to talk about streets, I need to go back to that last slide. Tammy, can you help me with the $2 million for street operations? What equivalent is given per year to the fire facilities improvements with that annual debt service?
Just say that one more time.
So the street operations is getting $2 million a year for $94. What revenue is coming to the fire facilities improvements with that debt service?
Oh, well, basically, it's $191,000 a year that we would be collecting for 20 years. And that would fund basically $5 million in infrastructure, correct?
2.5 million.
2.5 million. Okay, well, for me, I would not move forward with the street operations or the pavement preservation this year. We have ST3 that would be coming in November. I'd rather see that we allocate far more funds to the fire facilities improvement section of this, move it from $8 to $30, so we can get a real number that would go toward our facilities. Listen, I look at our personnel cost here and seeing that in the last 10 years have increased from 13 million up by $8 million to $21 million. The budgets have come to us as a council from the fire department. They've shown us their priorities regards to their percent increases in personnel cost, right? I mean, that's come to us as a council over the last 10 years. This is where they have allocated their priorities, and it's been a lot of it to salaries, and I appreciate them, and they're all professionals, and that I appreciate. There hasn't apparently been as much emphasis on the maintenance operations, and I think that obviously needs to be addressed, but that's where we're in this quandary. We could have placed more toward maintenance and operations rather than the personnel costs, but then you always look at comparisons to other cities, but when you're doing those percentage increases, you get off by that 1 foot, about 10 miles from here, you're like 10,000 miles apart. That's what I think has happened with this personnel cost section of it. The last 10 years has now happened, and we are where we are today, and what I would like to see is that we come up with a real fire facilities improvement program, that we come back next week and talk about this, or set up, a special council session if we need to, because obviously we still have a lot of questions. We've gone for an hour and a half or more, and we're not done yet for something I think we're supposed to take us 30 minutes. So I'm not prepared at this point. I don't think we are as a council either to set a firm direction. But I'm worried about what's coming in November, that if we put 4 ballot measures together, with everything else that's going to be on the November ballot, we're going to see all of these fail. I'd rather divide these into 2 different years, where this year it would be focused on a real fire program and a request to our citizens, and then next year in 2017 we can come back with, my priority would be parks, because I think the last time we heard a lot of negative comments regards to roads being included in that program. So I'd be fire and parks, but for this year for sure I want to see fire going forward in a real program that we come back and talk about next week, and place a real monetary value that brings more than $2.5 million, but something more like $7.5 million. That's my request.
Me?
Age before beauty.
Oh, that hurts. Well, you've understood my passion. My passion is to get the fire department fixed. I think that's our primary responsibility. I think streets are a high interest to most citizens. I think we need to go out and we need to talk to them and find out if this ballot could pass. I think the ST3 is going to throw a lot of things off. That's going to be a lot of money people are going to be paying for that, and I think we can go with the 2% sales tax. I think the pavement preservation, sidewalk and crosswalks, we should go for, and we should go for the fire service. You know, I know Tammy said that the M&O is just a small portion of the fire department budget, and that being so, it's the training portion. And I can't emphasize how important that is. I really can't emphasize how important that is. You know, I don't want one of our personnel injured because they didn't receive some training. That'd be a travesty, and that'd be unacceptable in my mind. And Davina, I don't think it's 10 years. I know this fire department, in my mind and in my personal opinion, has been underfunded for over 30 years. So I'm at fault for the last 6. My bad. I won't let it happen anymore. Bald before hair.
Touche. I'm okay with moving forward on everything, and I agree with, as I said before, 600,000 isn't enough, and the 2.5 million isn't enough for fire, and I'm for having more money there. I'm also for having more money at for streets. The timing as to when these things go out, I think that's the discussion that needs to happen next. Like I say, personally, there's probably not enough money up there to do the things that we should be doing. Again, I think they're just stopgap measures. So really, I think, in my opinion, the question is this enough money? And the next question is, what ballots do they go on? Do they go on in August? Do they go on in November? February? Do we spread them out? That's probably the bigger conversation. That and maybe adding more money to it. I think part of our discussion also, and as part of the education with the public, is LIDs for sidewalks and traffic calming. Your LID, your tax dollar improving your area, and you see the results of it. I think that's also a very sellable thing to different communities within the city. I would like to see better education, not just for the public, but for council on how they work, the process to start one and all. I would consider it in my neighborhood to talk to my neighbors about forming an LID so that we saw real results right now, that our dollars being reinvested directly into our neighborhood. So I think that needs to be part of this whole conversation. I caution the comments on finding out what the people will support. We can't poll the public as to whether something will pass or not. We can educate them about what we're doing, but there's a very fine line on doing something inappropriate that can get us in trouble when we start asking for opinions on whether something will pass muster with the voters. So I will trust staff will keep us on the correct side of that line. So, but I'm supportive of these. Again, maybe add more money to them, but the big conversation for me is what ballot do they go on?
Alrighty. I had a question. Sales tax, what will it be at if we add the 0.2 in?
It will be at,
Is it going to be 10?
trying to think on this, right now it's 9.5, so it'll be 9.8. Yeah, it'll be 10.
Yeah, that's not going to fly. I don't see that. I'm interested in passing something, not failing everything. Call me practical. I'm concerned about this advisory group because I know a few people that are supporters, and they said to me, if you want me to advocate for all four, I don't want to be on that group because I don't advocate for all four. There's no way they're going to pass. And these are people who vote for taxes. I can't remember the last time I voted no on a tax other than the streets and public spaces, whatever it was called. And if you showed me 4, I'd say, what on earth? One thing that was explained to me today that I've been asked about this week with additional revenue that I think it should be a major, major part of our advocacy and education of the public is that 1% property tax. I understood it to be that we can't increase our property tax by more than 1%. But what I didn't understand that was explained to me today is even if your property value goes up by $100,000, you're still held to 1%. And I have a lot of neighbors who've asked me and said, but you guys should be making more money. And so people don't understand. It's not just what we can do, it's also how it impacts just raw assessed value. I guess I'll say I think it's really important, and it's the right thing to do to support the pavement and sidewalks and crosswalks. I just think it's our duty. I don't think it's going to pass, and I don't think it should be 0.2. I don't think we should hit the 10% mark. I think that's asking for failure. I could support street operations, fire maintenance, not all at the same time. I still think we need a better assessment of the facility improvements. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, I'll try to make this quick. So, out of curiosity, so we had the transportation benefit district that we started, and we could start a $20 tab fee that would be added on to each vehicle's tab within the city.
Yes.
What would that generate per year?
$650,000.
Okay. So that wouldn't even get us close. And that would be for street operations, or could we use it for either? How
You
would
could
that
use
work?
it for either.
Okay. We did go to staff and we asked them what revenue sources they needed for fire and for streets, and this is what they came up with. So I at least have some pause when I hear, well, this isn't enough, we should ask for more. And I have no idea whether or not we need more or not based on what staff has provided. I mean, we asked for what they gave us, and they gave us what they said they need, and so I'm sticking with the numbers that they have. I don't want them to go back. I don't support you guys going back to the drawing board and trying to gin up higher amounts of money to tax the public. This is what you guys came forward with, and so I'm comfortable with where we're at. I don't think we should do all 4 at the same time. I think that's pretty clear with the group, just for the sake of actually getting something to pass. I just having 4 at one time just doesn't sit right with me. I want all 4 things to pass. I think it's important that we fund all these things, but we've got to be strategic and smart about how we put a ballot together. So, I'm not sure. Not another round though, just because you never got a chance to weigh in on when. Okay. I think that's about all I really had to add to what I said earlier. There was some other questions asked about like how much the sales tax would be. I think that's important to keep in mind. I mean, it'd be 10% sales tax. I don't know if we want that as a community to have. I don't know what that is like compared to other cities. I would be curious to know how many are at 10% or above when this comes back to us. And then just real quick, when I hear the term draconian cuts to any program, that is very concerning to me. Street operations is vital. You know, the face of the city isn't City Hall; it's our roads. And if they look horrible because we did draconian cuts to our crews, you know, we're going to hear about it. People are going to, you know, I've heard bus drivers say there's no line in the middle of the road, so they can't really see on foggy mornings with a bunch of kids in the bus because it's foggy, and you know, things like that will start coming up more and more if we have draconian cuts to our street operations. So we've said, you know, public safety is number one. I think all 4 of these things are public safety, and for street operations specifically, road striping is it makes it so the fire department doesn't have to come to a tragedy of head-on collision. And I don't know how much money that is into this budget, but I mean, that is something as a policymaker, I can't look away from that. Like, that's seems like such an irresponsible thing for us to do if we don't just at least paint the line in the middle of the road so people don't run head in on to each other. So yes, I want them all to come back. I have very huge concerns about having draconian cuts to our street operations crew, so that's why I asked about the transportation benefit district. So I'd like to know what that would do to reduce, I mean, if we don't go for this ballot measure in fall, that TBD, what would that do to help prop up or at least keep our street operations from going through draconian cuts?
There is a logic to putting all 4 on the ballot at one time, and that is a transparent process. Instead of saying 2 now, 2 later, we're eventually going to be asking for all of it anyway. So there's a logic of putting them all on the ballot together. There is a logic behind it. You might not agree with it. Where, as our director of finance has said, citizens have come to know that if they need that budgets have been cut significantly with various tax initiatives, and that when they want things, they might have to vote extra for them. And I'm concerned that we would, for example, move forward only with the fire, and then in response to possible draconian cuts, institute a councilmanic $20 TBD fee, which will not put a dent in anything, but potentially disenfranchise people who said, well, you went ahead and raised the money anyway. My preference is to educate and ask, and along the lines of being transparent. I think we can have a public hearing and invite people with the information that we have to come tell us what they're thinking. And that doesn't compromise our ability to get that information. We're not advocating anything. I think that people are free to come speak to us either in a public hearing or personally through our office hours and let us know and help inform us. So, as it stands, from my perspective, I would want to move forward with the 4. Thinking that a fire impact fee might be able to reduce the amount on the facility bond, potentially even maintenance and operations if you're talking about using the purchase of equipment, because I thought the impact fee could be applied to that as well. But anyway, I think there's a potential with that impact fee to reduce the ask a little bit.
So Mayor, I propose that staff take your feedback, come back to you, not next week, because there's not enough time to really put some meaningful data together for you, maybe the following meeting. Because what I've heard this evening is 2 members would like all 4 to go forward. You all agree, for the most part, that these are all important, and the public should be asked to support them. It's a matter of timing. 2 of you, I've heard, want to go forward with all 4 of them at once. 2 of you believe that you should prioritize amongst the 4 which go forward in November, and then which go forward in the future election. And there's 2 that were somewhat undecided yet as to what goes forward and if it goes forward.
So you get tons of direction, right?
Direction, yeah, but that's what I picked up from the conversation. I would ask council if that's accurate.
Well, and I think, just to add to that, I think we want to obviously talk about this more. This was a 30-minute item, and we're already at our break time 2 hours later, and I feel like I don't have enough information. I think that we heard that a lot from different council members, that I think we need to talk about this more before we make a decision, or, move forward with direction.
So tentatively, I think I'll try to put this on, I don't know what's on the agenda, I don't know my projected agenda, but not next Tuesday, but the following Tuesday meeting.
And that'll be a special meeting then.
It would be a special meeting?
I believe so. I was looking at that.
You're saying for May 3rd? Next regular meeting.
Next regular meeting.
Our next regular, okay, May 3rd would be the next regular meeting. So that's enough time for staff to bring this back?
I'll look, it may be the following one that we pick also as well, just to give more time.
Okay.
To make sure we give you the data that you can make a decision
Okay.
The 10th would be great.
The 10th. Oh, May 3rd, I'm sorry. May 3rd is when you're, I think, tentatively scheduled right now to meet with the North Shore School Board, I believe. And so I think you want some dedicated time outside of that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. That was fun. So we're at our break time. Do you guys want to plunge into Fitzgerald or take a break?
Break.
Where are we at?
Lunch.
I got two, one plunge, one break.
I'm in the back.
Any opinion? There is a bathroom break. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's have a break for start back up at 8 o'clock. 7:51.
So, Josh. Didn't, when we were talking about the